Hey guys, so yeah, big thing of this chapter is Star and Stripe dies. And honestly, I've been having a real hard time trying to just figure out how to even start this review, honestly. But I figured I'm just gonna start by giving my overall thoughts on this, like on this section of the arc as a whole, that this whole fight between Shigaraki and Star and Stripe, because in retrospect, this is one of those fights where ultimately I think part of me knew from Star and Stripe's introduction that like her death had to happen. Like there's no way Horikoshi could conceivably keep her around without causing some problems. And here's the thing: the reason I've not been criticizing Star and Stripe's power directly is that is because I've seen cases where this idea of an overpowered person can work. The problem is though is that Horikoshi couldn't make it work. Like Horikoshi, like when it comes to Horikoshi and how he executed all this, this feels like one of those times where he had an idea and a concept in his head, but he didn't know how to properly execute it. Like this whole section with Star and Stripe felt like it needed at least a couple weeks to a month of Horikoshi going over with a fine tooth comb over the finer details with his editor and planning a blueprint for this fight before he put it on paper, because as is this is definitely like the roughest and most unpolished way for both a fight and character like to pretty much go down. I I don't know, just everything like the core of what I'm seeing on the page here. It it all feels like it could or should work, but in the way it's executed, none of it feels like like it's been properly paced or structured. There are aspects of this that needed there are aspects to this portion that really needed more of more thorough eye and a means by which to kind of say, okay, here's how this should work, here's how this should work, here's how this should work. And there are pieces of it that pretty much, because there are pieces of this whole section that do work, but just not coherently enough, I guess you could say. Um, Now, with that said, in concept, I do like how even though Star and Stripe did lose her power to Shigaraki, she still managed to completely turn it against him by exploiting All for One's biggest weakness as a quirk, because as it said in this chapter, All for One can steal quirks and bestow quirks, but once a quirk is stolen, it can't be discarded. Meaning, once those quirks are taken, he pretty much can't he can't destroy them. He can't just toss them aside. Like they're still bound to him, which does show that for as powerful as All for One is as a quirk, it still needs to in some way follow the basic rules of how quirks work, which is once you have one, it's pretty much bound to you. Now, Shigaraki in this case is now stuck with this power that's destroying him from the inside out. Now, again, the iffy part about this for me being the order in itself Star gives to reject all of the quirks it comes into contact with, like that feels like the part of this chapter that felt like a little like plot convenience. But at the core of it, I do like the idea that Shigaraki and All for One are not gonna get out of this unscathed. In fact, one thing that occurred to me, like reading this chapter and looking at the last couple pages of it, are it looks like there's implications within like Shigaraki's inner world or whatever you want to call it, inner mindscape, that the core of All for One itself seems to have been damaged but by pretty much New Order. So on top of losing a few quirks due to New Order, I think New Order might have also damaged the telepathic connection between Shigaraki and All for One. And even though it was a very rocky ride to get to this point, I feel comfortable in saying that between what Star and Stripe has done here and learning All for One's weakness, Horikoshi is definitely setting the stage for All for One and Shigaraki's defeat. Like just pretty much with what happened, I feel that this has kind of brought Shigaraki down to a bit more of a, like, I guess to a bit more of an even playing field to everyone else somewhat. So it's just a matter of how the defeat is planned out from here. Um, Now what's gonna come out of this and how Shigaraki is going to survive having himself torn apart, I'm not sure, but again, it's likely that one of Star and Stripes like comrades is going to inherit the quirk, but I'm still not sure what exactly is going to happen to Shigaraki himself. Like what's happening here. But one thing I think I do kind of like out here is that when you really look at like at what everything all for one had said about Star and Stripe and all the different scenarios that could have come from this fight, I do like how it in the end what happened here is something that not even All for One predicted to happen. Like it took even him by surprise, honestly, in some respects. Um, and and yeah, as I said, one of the big things to come out of this chapter that I love is we do finally get All for One's biggest weakness revealed, which is that he can't dispose of quirks. And when looking at previous moments and certain things, All for One has said this, like the reveal of All for One not being able to dispose of quirks is pretty much one of those reveals we already knew, but having it confirmed pretty much, like, again, it sets the stage that this is a weakness that can and will be exploited in the future. Like in some way or another, all for One's like biggest weakness of not being able to like dispose of quirks is really going to come back and bite him in the ass, even more than it did here with how Star and Stripe had given her quirk that final order. Now, one thing I would like to know is how this weakness is going to be exploited, because just again, it's one of those things where it looks like New Order isn't like Horikoshi isn't done with New Order yet. It looks like he still might have a plan for it. Otherwise, I don't think like he would have had Shigaraki like say that he's going to give it to one of the soldiers or whatnot. But it's likely like it's likely one of the soldier we've seen the most is the one who's most likely to inherit it, which would definitely be interesting. But I'd really like to know what. But cause one of the interesting things here is that the way All for One has talked about his desire to obtain New Order and putting that in context of this chapter, I think both New Order and One for All are going to be two sides of the same coin here, and they're both going to like play a part in the climax of the series. And with that connection between Shigaraki and All for One possibly weakened because of New Order, Izuku I think could conceivably use his own little connection with All for One and Shigaraki against them. Like I feel that's kind of what's being set up here, but I don't know. I'm just kind of speculating here and just based off information I know, but this feels like the route we're going, that the connection is now weakened between these two is now weakened, and now it's opened the door for Izuku to kind of exploit the connection he has in order to use against them, I think, in some way. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much all I got for this review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe. I'm on Twitter and on Crunchyroll. Be sure to hit the notification bell, hit the subscribe button, and just share the video around, guys. Dark Knight of Anime, signing off. Later, everyone.